Hey gang, welcome back to another awesome day out in the shop. I am Bob and it's time now for another shenanigan. Hey, today is a great day. We'll be putting the cylinder head back on my 1989 Jeep Comanche. It's got the 4-liter, the straight 6 Renix engine in it. And I've pulled the head, done some work to it, ground the valves, gasket matched the intake manifold and the head. And time now to put it back together. Stick around, we'll have some fun. Okay, so here's what we're working with today. We've got the cylinder head that I've pulled off. We've ground the valves, put in new valve seals, clean this up nice. I also did some gasket matching, porting these intake ports, as well as the intake ports on the intake manifold. Can't really see that there, but there's another video that describes all of that. And we'll be putting this head back on the engine and putting in the rocker arms and push rods, and that will be good. Let's talk for just a moment about cylinder head bolts though. So there's a lot of debate about should you reuse a cylinder head bolt or not. And I am going to reuse mine, and that's because I ordered the wrong ones. But there's something you want to look at. If you're going to reuse these, take a look and make sure the threads in what you pulled out are not stretched. They'll actually be distorted if they get stretched. Now there's two types of cylinder head bolts. There's the torque to yield, which means that as they're tightened down and they get tighter, they'll actually stretch, kind of like a rubber band, to account for that torque, or the how tight they are. This is not a torque to yield style bolt. And according to the service manual for the 1989 Renix engine, I can reuse these at least once. Now, some old school ways of guys with old Chevys and whatnot that would reuse head bolts, that I was taught anyway, is we'll paint them with something white. I'll use some white out after they're all in, which is an indicator that it's a used bolt that was put in. So we're going to make all of that go into that beautiful little rig right there, also known as Papa Smurf. So let's talk for a moment about what's been done so far. We'll unpackage the gift here. Okay, so you can see these nice new gold expansion plugs or freeze plugs I put in. That also is in another video. You'll see some shiny spots on here. When I clean this, I actually use my redneck milling machine, also known as a 12-inch file, just to gently work over this to make sure I didn't have any significant issues. And I also pulled the lifters out, which you cannot see very well, but they're down inside here. Pulled them out, cleaned them all up. They're in good shape. I had no problems with any ticks or lack of oil, so I cleaned those up nice, and also dumped about a half a quart of automatic transmission fluid down here. It makes its way down into the oil pan, of course, but that will work as a cleaning agent once I'm done with all this and get it all put together and I do get it running. So it is important to keep this clean. You can see some of this adhesive. I'm going to go off camera for a minute, get this all cleaned up. I'll be right back. Okay, so there's the head. You see the shiny spots. You see I put some rags down so I can flop it over. And here is the block I'll be putting this all onto. Now the interesting thing is going to be, you have to be pretty careful because this head gasket, this happens to be a 3-piece head gasket. You can see there's 3 layers there. And pay attention a little bit to how it's constructed. You see how right here it's only 2 layers. So where does that go, right? So take a little time to figure out what things look like. What I'm thinking is, where it's just 2 layers, I'm going to put that to the back, because at the back I can see some notches where if there was a 3rd layer, it would make no difference. I don't know, you can't necessarily see that, but I can. Now, something interesting about this engine is there are no alignment pins in the block. I'm used to that in most engines, where you can put this down and the gasket's going to stay right where it is. It's not going to slide around as we put our head on. So that should be interesting because, well, the head is not light. So we're going to see what kind of creative things we can do here to get this rascal put in without making up new words. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this block in here as a little something to work with, where I can maybe set the head down and then lift it over, because we don't want to damage this new head gasket, now do we? Gosh, this should be interesting. Let's see how we do here. Okay. One thing I will point out here, as an aside, this back bolt you cannot put in because the bulkhead, the firewall is in the way. So cut a little piece of hose, put this in, won't hang out too far, but that way you've got that in place before you get started. Okay. Wish me luck and a good back. Oh, let's see what we did here. By golly, I think we got her the first stab. Let's see here. Just like that. And voila. That is a beautiful thing. I managed to pick this up, set it straight down, and hopefully everything goes together smooth like butter from here. Now, something else I want to point out is that there's two different lengths of head bolts. And for the Renix, in this case, we know that the longer head bolt, we can see where the threads are. The longer head bolt goes on this side because, well, we've got more head to contend with here, and the shorter head bolt goes on the other side. Another thing for consideration is that when you're putting something in that requires torque, is whether you're putting it in a dry torque, or wet. Now, I cleaned out I chased all the threads in the block before I got started with this. Cleaned them out really good. I shot them with some brake cleaner and then blew everything out really good. This was a day or so ago, with compressed air so that they were nice and clean. You'll also notice I took these to the wire wheel and cleaned them up because I am reusing these head bolts. Made sure they're going in nice and clean. Now, when you torque something down like this, if I were to have oil in there, your torque ratings are going to be different than if you put them in dry. Everything I've read says you put these in dry, so that's what I'm doing. I'll get these all seated. I'll be back in just a moment before we start torquing anything. Okay, here we have it. Now what I've done is I've just snugged these all down by hand, is all I'm going to do. Make a note that, you know, these are numbered, start in the center. I think they go 1, 2, and they go in a circle clockwise according to the book. But number 11, this head bolt that's right up here, that's near your water jacket, your water pump, this actually has a water jacket here. This one you're not going to torque to the same tightness as everything else. These are going to land all at 110 foot-pounds. This will be at 100 foot-pounds, and it needs sealant put on it. So I've already done that. So we're going to tighten this in a sequence of 3 steps, okay? And we do that because if we try to go all at once, I'm setting this to Oops, let's try getting this to, it calls for 22, 45, and then 110. So I'm going to get this, my torque wrench set up here at, we're going to call it 24 for good luck, 24 pounds. But what we're going to do is anytime you're going to torque something down like this, you don't just start down one side and go around the other, because you can torque it the wrong direction and it won't seal properly. So we're going to start in the center. General rule of thumb is always you start in the center and then you go the next one out, next one out, next one out, next one out, work your way all the way out to the outer edge. And then when you go to your sequence number 2, start in the center again. Now, according to the Jeep manual, this center head stud nearest the distributor is number 1, 2, and then it goes 3, 4, oh gosh, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Kind of odd. Bottom line is just remember to start in the middle and you work your way out. So I'm going to get everything up to the first setting at 22 foot-pounds. We'll follow the directions this time. I don't always do that, but when I do it, I mean it. I got too much work into this to want to tear it apart again if I can help it. A little bit of a windy day here. Not sure how it is for you. You know, I've mentioned I would love to have your feedback and comments. You notice that I did kind of do this a little out of sequence since it's only the first little setting here. I did not follow all the rules like I said I would. Shame on me. But I would like to get some feedback from y'all about not only this series. I'm going to have to do something different for that. That's going to be a booger, isn't it? Get your feedback on this little bit of work in my videos, because that's what helps me do better content. I'm not sure how I'm going to get down into that little guy. Hang on, I'll be right back. Well, I will try my not so deep socket and see if this will get me my first couple settings anyway. Okay, we've got 22. Now we're going to pump it up here to, it calls for 46. So I'm going to call, we're going to call that 46 right there. Not that you can see it. Start here in the middle again. Now this calls for us to do this twice. So I'm going to bring it up here to 46. We're going to go through the whole sequence here. Remember, we're starting from the center and working our way out to keep everything nice and consistent. And again, the book shows it is just doing a clockwise pattern, starting with first like this and just going in a pattern so that we don't lose track of where we are. Okay, we've got there. And so what was the first thing I did? Lost track of where I was. That's how I roll. Now again, the book says to go through this sequence twice before stepping up to our final torque setting. So we're going to do that very thing. And that took another bit of a turn. And that's why they want you to do that. Because as the head gets tightened down, I tighten this one, it can make this one feel a little bit less tight, right? Was I here already? I can't remember. This is the problem when you talk and try to do something at the same time. I'm going to go back to that guy. But what I will do is for my final torque setting, I just won't talk. Some of you are probably saying I just shouldn't talk anyway. There we go. Okay. Now we're going to take these up to 110 foot-pounds of torque. Kind of hard to read on my poor old doodad here. There's 110. All right. Let's see what this feels like now. Yeah, that's gluten tight. It's the German wrench, the gluten tight. And you can have a tendency to want to get a little carried away with this. Just ease up on it. Ease up on it. Okay, so there we have it. Back the pressure off my torque wrench. Don't ever put it way under pressure. It will change its accuracy in the future. And there we have it. So now, because I'm here, I'm just going to give everything a little bit of a drink of oil before I get crazy putting on the valve cover. Actually, we're a long ways from putting on the valve cover, aren't we? Okay, next steps are going to include reinstalling the rocker arms and the push rods. And remember, the push rods are going to push this rocker arm up so it'll push the valve down to open it, and it rocks back and forth. Now this component is the rocker arm, and then this is actually two pieces. This is the bridge and this is the fulcrum. And if you look at the fulcrum, you can see these grooves in here. Those are oiler grooves. And if you look inside the rocker arm, you're going to see that there are matching grooves. Now I'm holding this the wrong way right now. See how at the rocker arm, those oiler grooves are narrow at the top and at the fulcrum, narrow at the bottom? Make sure if you take these things apart that you put it together the right direction, okay? See, this narrow is going to go to this narrow, okay? If we do that the wrong way, it's not going to oil properly. Now, before I assemble this, I don't want to assemble it dry. Again, I'm reusing everything, so I'm making sure everything's going in the original spots. So I'm going to put some lubricant on here. You can use engine oil. I happen to use like an engine assembly grease because it holds up better. We want to make sure that we lubricate those well before we put them in. Also, for my push rods here, lubricate each end. And you work it down, and you got to kind of feel your way to make sure that it's seated into that lifter properly. So let's get a little bit of grease going here. See what kind of fun we can have. Now you can't see me because I'm off camera over here. You know, that's the challenge when you're a one-man show. You just don't get to see all of the excitement because I don't have someone else swinging a camera. If you're in the Prescott area and you want to be part of this and we can have some fun together, hit me up. Maybe we'll do some videos together. Okay, so here I am back to my bridge That's this piece here with the fulcrum attached. And I can see where this is going to line up, narrow top, just like so, just like so. Now I know that that's got some lubrication. I'm also going to oil the bejeebers out of it before we get to rolling. Now, I made sure that I put these back in the same, rocker arm is mated to the same valve, which is mated to the same push rod as what came out. Now, I've got number one top dead center. And I know there's some better ways to do this, but, well, gosh, when have I ever done things the right way, huh? You really just need to be very, very careful. If you get too crazy and just start torquing these bolts down, whoops, sorry about that. Start torquing these bolts down out of hand, you've got to remember that they're going to be under some pressure right now. Oh, come on. I like to do everything by hand first, make sure everything's seated in here good. Okay, what's going to happen is as I tighten this down, it's going to be pushing one of these valves down. So we're going to go just a little bit, one side and then the other. And these are set for 19 foot-pounds is all that calls for. So don't get crazy. 19 foot-pounds, that's all that's going to hold those guys down. Okay, so got you installed. Things are tight. Both of these are tight. We've got pressure on those guys. And what I'll be doing is, when I'm all done, I'm going to be saturating everything in oil. Everything in oil. Because you can never have too much lubrication in something like this, right? Now, remember when we were talking about the push rods earlier, they are hollow, okay? And they're hollow because the lifter that's down inside that lifts the push rod up, okay? That lifter is a hydraulic lifter. That means it's got a little space inside that gets oil in it and pushes and pumps oil. And it pumps oil up through this hole and up out of a little hole that's in the top of your rocker arm. And that's what lubricates the whole top end of the engine. That oil comes up here, overflows, and that's what lubricates the entire top end of your engine. So your lifters are very important, and keeping those journals clean is very important. Okay, I'm going to carry on. I'm going to go ahead and install the rest of these. You can watch part of it, you know, a little faster than my normal action. Okay, so these are all installed. I've got them all just a whisker over finger tight. And starting at the front, I'm going to work my way back. I've already torqued the front two cylinders to 19 foot-pounds. And then along the way, if you watch, you'll probably see some of these springs compress. Just remember, don't tighten down one side of this bridge all the way. Work your way back and forth, real careful, because I'm actually pushing that valve open right now. So you gotta be back and forth, real careful like, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to stress this push rod and bend it. Another thing to keep in mind is when you're reassembling this stuff, as you put your rocker arms in place and you set them down over the push rod, spin the push rod, make sure things are seated nice, make sure everything goes down nice and even. Even Steven is the name of the game. Okay, and we'll just keep on keeping on. And there we have it. We now have the head installed. We have the push rods installed. We have the rocker arms installed, held down by the bridge with a fulcrum in there that the rocker arm moves on. These are not an adjustable rocker arm like you have in other engines that I'm familiar with. So this is kind of new to me. This is all about the condition of the push rod and other components. Even though I've put engine assembly lube in there, I'm still gonna load these up, because when this engine starts up for the first time, which will be on a future episode, these push rods will not have any oil in them. And so they're all going to have to fill up. And that's why we pre-lube everything to be safe. Because when metal is on metal without any lubrication, well, that is a bad thing. So there we have it. That's as much as we're going to do today. I'll be right back with a little wrap up. Okay, so that's going to button it up for this afternoon. Sun was going down, getting a little nippy outside, and I'm getting fragile in my old age. Something I did not show you that I did off camera was, once you get all of the rocker arms installed and everything tightened down and torqued carefully, make sure that you turn the engine over by hand. Put a socket on the end of the crankshaft, turn it over, and watch all your rocker arms move like they should. Make sure nothing is bound up. What you don't want to do is try to start the engine and bang, break something. If you're turning it over by hand slowly and carefully with the spark plugs out, you're going to feel resistance and feel a problem, hopefully before you have a problem. Okay, we're getting that much closer to having Papa Smurf back out on the road. Thanks for joining me. Remember, if you enjoy this content, hit the subscribe button, click like, but most important, I would really dig having some comments. Get them feedback. Let's chat about some of these things and build a little community and have some fun together. Go out and make somebody smile today. You both deserve it. Bob out.